I'm sorry, I just realized that I hadn't put myself on the stage. So now you can see me and you can see my screen. All right, I'm going to try this new layout today and we'll kind of see how it goes. All right. I think that's what I wanted. Let me take a look here. Kind of wish I didn't have those black areas around the edge, but that's all right. All right. I think you should be able to see everything I'm working on pretty well. All right, so what I have right here is a local copy of the Aardvark marketing website. I just cloned it down, so it is an exact copy of the Aardvark website as of about 2 minutes ago. And I don't believe anybody's in there making any updates or changes. So I'm going to use this local copy since I am going to be doing code changes. And then at the end of the stream, I'll go ahead and commit those and push them up to the live site. So if you want to go check our live site, give me maybe 10 or 15 minutes after we wrap up the stream, and I'll get those pushed up so that you can see all of the fixes that we did together in action. So quickly, the tools that we're going to use today is nothing more than a browser. So I'm using Firefox today, and then a couple of free browser add-ons that are really helpful for running the WCAG Easy Checks. The first one is the Web Developer add-on. It's just called Web Developer, and it will put this little purple cog on your toolbar. And this one gives us easy access to some tools that are really helpful. And we'll see that. It lets us really easily check image alt text. It lets us remove all the CSS and check the reading order, quickly check our heading levels, and all of those kinds of things. The other tool that I'm using is this tool, which is called Color Picker, which allows us to easily pick colors off of the web page so that we can then put those hex codes into a color contrast checker to make sure that we've got sufficient contrast on anything that we see on the page. And for a color contrast checker, I like to use the WebAIM color contrast checker. So I just did a web search for WebAIM color contrast, and it comes right up. It is one of the most popular ones out there on the web. So it's webaim.org/resources/contrast checker, all together as one word, no hyphen or anything separating them. And how this tool works is that you paste in a foreground color and a background color, and it will return to you a contrast ratio. It also returns to you some quick, easy to understand results here at the bottom of the screen. And I just want to explain how these work because there is a little nuance to it. So first up, we have normal text, which is any text that's less than around 20 pixels, I believe it is. I'm sorry, it is 18.66 pixels. So it is defined in points, which if you're a graphic designer or you've ever done any kind of print design, you know all about points as a system of measurement. We don't really use that on the web. So it's interesting that that is used in WCAG. But 14 points translates to 18.66 pixels. So if our text is smaller than that, and bold, okay, then it has to meet the normal text guideline. And if it's 18 points or about 24 pixels and not bold, so just regular weight text has to be 24 pixels to count as normal text, then that's what this passes. And you'll notice that there are two tests here, one for WCAG AA and one for WCAG AAA. So if you are testing a website where you are trying to get compliance with WCAG AA, you can ignore this AAA test. So it could pass AA and not pass AAA, and that could be perfectly fine for your situation. You only need to pay attention to the AAA contrast level if you are trying to meet AAA compliance, or maybe you're just trying to meet AAA compliance for contrast alone. That's a perfectly valid thing to try to do. All right, then for our large text, which again, large text, if it's bold, it's greater than 18.66 pixels, or it is 18.66 pixels or larger, I guess I should say. And if it's not bold, it is 24 pixels or larger. And that has a separate contrast test. It has to have less contrast because the text is so much larger. And again, we have the AA and the AAA. And then finally, we have the contrast requirements for graphical objects and user interface components. So ensuring that we can see the edges of things like text inputs on the screen, icons that might be used in place of words for different controls, and things like that also have their own contrast requirement. And this will tell us if the two colors that we have picked are passing that test. All right, so I'm going to head back over. Oops, I have the color picker is going. All right, let's turn that off. All right, so let's start stepping through. I guess we'll just use the home page as a starting point. And let's start stepping through the WCAG Easy Checks. And you should be able to just do a web search for WCAG Easy Checks and come up with the page. Notice that at the top of the page, here, I'll put it over on the screen where everybody can see just for a real quick. Notice at the top of the page that there is a draft of a new version of Easy Checks. So I have looked at that and it is not quite complete, and I would say not quite ready to be used, although you could definitely do so and give them feedback on updates and changes that they might make. So I am going to be using this current version, which is actually pretty old. I think it is about 10 years old, but it is still relevant because the accessibility guidelines have not really changed all that much in the last 10 years. We have had WCAG 2.0 is just over 10 years old. And we have had two additional releases, WCAG 2.1 and WCAG 2.2, come out since then. And they each added a small handful of additional success criteria to the list, but all of the ones that were there before are all still part of the spec, except for one, which is WCAG 4.1.1 was removed in WCAG 2.2. And 4.1.1 just required that you have valid HTML markup on your page. And that was removed simply because browsers have gotten so good at fixing any issues in your HTML that it's no longer relevant. You could definitely still run a quick, HTML validation on your page to make sure it's in good shape, but you're mostly doing that for, ensuring that your code quality is good and that maybe on the offhand that there might be some kind of unexpected issue, but really we wouldn't really expect that to cause any kind of problem. Unless it was a pretty severe HTML markup issue. All right, so our very first WCAG Easy Check is to check the page title. And of course, the easiest way to do that is to just hover over the tab at the top of the browser. This works in both Firefox and Chrome, and I assume in any other browsers you might want to use as well. And now we can see the page title is Aardvark, the fastest way to perform accessibility audits. And we want to evaluate, is that title descriptive of this page? Does it let us know where we are? And let us know what kind of content that we could expect to find on the site. So that is the name of our product, and it is our tagline that we're using right now. So that's an okay, it's an okay page title. I might actually want to include the word home or homepage in that title. And that is not a change that I have to make in code because this is a WordPress website. So that is something that we could log in and do right in the WordPress settings. So because I'm working on a local copy, I'm not going to do that right now. I will do that a little bit later on. So let me just make myself a note that I want to make a small update to the homepage title. And so like I said, I'll do that right after the stream ends. So if you want to give me 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the stream, I'll go on and make any little changes like that that we identified today. And then they'll be live on the site so that you can check them out. All right, our next test is to check the image text alternatives, or the alt text, for images that are on the page. And this is where the web developer plugin comes in really handy. So if we open that up and go to the images tab, you can see that the very first option that we have is to display the alt attributes. And if I click that, you can see that now anywhere that I have an image, I can see exactly what the alt text is. I don't have to dig into the code. I don't have to open the browser console. I don't have to know how HTML works. I can just see what the alt text of the image is. What's interesting is that this one is written backward, and I'm not really sure why. So that's interesting. So I'm just going to go quickly and look at the page. So this one says Aardvark logo. And in case you missed it, there was a advent calendar, an accessibility advent calendar just published this past holiday season. So just about 6 weeks ago or so. And I think one of the first articles that got published as part of that, or one, if not the first article that got published as part of that, was an article from Rianne Reitvault, giving her golden rule for what the alt text on a logo should be. And this is not it. So I'm going to make myself a note. So again, this is something that we would just go in and change in the WordPress settings and not in the code itself. So I'll make myself a note to just update the alt text on the Aardvark logo to match her recommendation. And we can actually pull up that article real quick and take a look at it. Logo alt. All right, let's see if we can find that. Accessibility advent. A link on the logo in the header. Here we are. Okay. Yes, published December 1st. So it's the very first article that got published as part of this series. And if we scroll down a little bit, this is the recommendation, I think, to say that it is the Aardvark logo and to specify, because it is wrapped in a link, right? Clicking on that logo or activating that logo with the keyboard would take you to the homepage of the site. So her recommendation is to add the alt text calling out what it is, and then to also specify, because it is part of a link, that it is going to take you to the homepage, because we want to have text that's included as part of a link should describe where that link is going to take you. And so this is the recommendation for what that should be. So ours currently just says Aardvark logo. I will add to the homepage to the end of our image alt text for our logo. And she goes, she adds some additional context and additional information for any questions you might have or anything you might be curious about. So I will be following that recommendation. As soon as I get off the stream, I'll go log into our Aardvark and I will fix that. So let's keep going and look at the others on the page. So first is this big blue triangle that appears almost as kind of like a background image. But because of the layout, it's not a background image. It's actually in there as a text, or I'm sorry, as a image element. And of course, that is strictly decorative. That triangle isn't conveying any kind of information. It's not furthering anybody's knowledge about accessibility or our product or anything like that. It is just there for design, for decorative purposes. So it is correct that it has an empty alt attribute. Next, we have this image, the three triangles, and we have a wheelchair user rather sitting at their desk. And I'm not really sure why the alt is showing is backward here. That's kind of interesting. I don't know if we have some maybe fancy CSS that is inverting this image, or if there's just something else going on with the web developer add-on. But that is empty. And this is a case where there's definitely some debate in the accessibility community about how to handle images like this, that it is not explicitly conveying information, right? Like we're not really learning anything more about aardvark or anything more about accessibility by being able to see this image. However, this image is definitely conveying a mood, um, right? It definitely has an intention behind it. And so there are definitely people who would say this image definitely needs to have alt text giving a description of what's happening there, and other people who would say, oh yeah, that's accessible, or I'm sorry, decorative. So it doesn't actually need alt text. Whichever way, whichever side you come down on, I'm happy to hear any arguments if you disagree with us, that we have left that blank for now. But I think I'm going to go ahead and leave that as it is. And then this is another one, I think, that has a similar argument to be made, where you could say, yeah, that's not really conveying a lot of information. Or you could say, no, that's actually telling us, that accessibility includes all of these different things, that it's, hearing and cognitive disabilities and vision disabilities and hearing disabilities and mobility disabilities. So there's definitely an argument to be made that maybe this image should have alt text. And actually, I might add alt text to that one when I go into the WordPress settings once the stream is over today. All right, let's keep going down the page. Here we have the aardvark logo has an all attribute explaining what it is. So I think that's great. These images here are definitely more on the decorative side, I would say, than on the informative side. They're pretty generic. They could be used on almost any website, really. They are just computer monitors showing vaguely website looking kinds of graphic, very simplified website type graphics. So I think I'm happy to go ahead and leave those as empty alt text and declare those as decorative images. All right, and then we have, this is all one giant image that is several different screenshots from our application. And this is the alt text that we have on it, which is a little bit long. So compilation of aardvark components, including pop-ups for accessibility failures, list element to highlight failures and warnings for a specific page, the team management interface, and website component to summarize total issues and warnings. Probably we can handle this in a slightly better way. I'm not sure exactly how many characters that might happen to be, but it is a good idea to keep alt text to around 150 characters or less, and that's probably around that length. There is no technical limitation on how long alt text can be. So there's no, I think maybe an older Windows computer will cut you off eventually, but it's quite generous. I think you might be hard pressed to actually meet the threshold where an old Windows computer might start cutting off that attribute. So there's not a technical reason. The reason is that the way alt text is handled by screen readers makes it a little bit difficult to navigate when it's really long. If a screen reader is reading through regular text on the page, so just like a paragraph that's on your page, you can pause, you can go back 1 word or go back 10 words or go forward 5 words, etc. You can kind of jump around in that text. And with alt attributes, you don't have those options. Your only options, once the screen reader starts reading some alt text, is to pause it, skip it, or go back to the beginning. So if you miss a word halfway through a very long alt attribute, you have to go all the way back to the beginning, right? You got distracted for a second. you have to go all the way back to the beginning of the alt attribute and start listening from the very, very beginning, which can get really frustrating. So that's the main reason that we do try to keep alt text from getting too long and having just too much text in it, because it does get a little bit unwieldy and difficult to navigate. So what might be a better option here? It might actually be a better option to have this image broken up into 5 separate images. Um, and each one has their own alt attribute and or a caption. I like to use captions for screenshots a lot because I think the information that's in a caption is helpful for everybody, and not just people who are consuming alternative text. Um, when you have a caption, everybody can access that caption. If you are looking at the page, you can see the caption text, and it will, of course, be read to a screen reader user. Now, how well a screen reader does at actually associating the caption text with the image is a little bit up for debate. We do use figure with a fig caption, and one would hope that that would be correctly implemented in screen readers, but it is unfortunately unevenly implemented. But I think that an average user who's not familiar with the interface of your application or whatever it is that you're taking screenshots of might have a little bit of trouble kind of placing the context of that screenshot and understanding that screenshot and why it is there. And that's why I like to use captions for those a lot, because it gives somebody else context, right? If I just come to this, I have no idea what aardvark is, what it does, and I just see this screenshot, it could be difficult to kind of place that and understand what it is. Even if you are somebody who knows a good amount about accessibility, you're going to have to kind of read through that screenshot and try to figure out, wait, what is this for? And then hopefully you would understand at the end of it. But if we had a caption on the bottom of that particular image that said, oh, here's the form where you can report accessibility issues, and have some information filled in for you automatically, I think that would be a lot more helpful. So that's something that we could definitely consider. I don't think that that's something, so breaking this up into 5 separate images, obviously we'd have to use some CSS to get a layout like this, and add some captions to each of the images. And that's not necessarily something I'm going to be able to do in just a few minutes after the stream today, but that's definitely something that we could consider changing on our website. Okay. I noticed that our icons are not getting recognized as images by the web developer add-on, and that is because those are using a font, right? They're using an icon font. So we'll come back to those in just a minute. All right. So my headshot, my signature, those all attributes are looking good. Here we have just this little triangle here with an empty alt attribute, which is definitely correct. Those are decorative images. And what else do we have? So this is marked as a decorative image. And I think, again, this is one of those ones that you can make an argument kind of either way, on is this a decorative image or is it not? Because it is definitely conveying some information about accessibility, and how people with different capacities can still access the content that's contained on a website. And that might be helpful. It's also definitely setting a mood, right, for the page. And so we've got a few more along the same vein that are just showing people using technology in different ways. And we've got another image that's just a whole pile of different technology all sitting there together. All right, and we have a support person looking friendly, ready to help. No alt text on that image. We have decided that that is decorative. And I think that's another one that is up for debate because it is establishing a mood. It is kind of conveying some information like here, this is a section that's about support. And you can see that at a glance without even having to read the headline. But of course, you are missing that context if you can't see that image for whatever reason. And we have one of our favorite illustrations, which is also marked as a decorative image. And if you're curious, the images that appear throughout our website are custom done illustrations by an illustrator that we commissioned to do those for us. All right, here we have another set of images. And again, these are smaller, and I think some of these are the same kind of generic, website, pared down, simplified website UI that we saw earlier on the page. And I would say that those definitely fall on the side of being decorative images. They're not really conveying any kind of information. They could be on any website. All right. And here we have the Aardvark logo in the footer. And again, we have some icons that are not being picked up as images by the web developer add-on. Okay, so a few places that we could make some changes or consider making some changes. I wanted to show you another thing that you can do with the web developer add-on is you can have it outline images with just empty alt attributes, which would be all of the images that you have marked as decorative. So you can see this kind of dark brick red outline has shown up around everything that is marked as a decorative image. You can also have it outline images that don't have all attributes at all, which hopefully we should never have that, because an image is decorative, informative, or functional. And decorative images should still have an alt attribute. It should just have an empty value. And functional and informational images should always have alt text. So we should never have images that have no alt attribute at all. And as I scroll down through this page, you can see that nothing is getting highlighted. So that's not an issue that we have on this page. All right. So that was checking for our image text alternatives. And next, we're going to check for headings. My favorite way to check to make sure that we are using headings and that they have a meaningful hierarchy is to go ahead and go to the CSS tab and say disable all styles. And now we see the page just naked HTML. And we definitely have some funny things going on here. I'm not even sure what this big black triangle is. Okay, we got another one and another one. All right. I wonder, oh, those are the icons that we are using, the ones that are the icon fonts. I don't know why they're displaying so gigantically, though. That's definitely weird. And as I'm scrolling down through this page, I actually don't see a lot of headings being used, which is a little bit odd because I feel like we're definitely using headings on the page. Oh, okay. All right. So that was all our navigation at the top of the screen. And here we are finally getting to our content. Okay. So there's something funny going on there with, I think these must be the little icons that show you that you have a drop-down menu. I don't know why they're displaying that way without any CSS. That's definitely something that we could look into. All right, so here we go. Now we have some headings. And with just bare HTML, it's pretty easy to tell heading levels. So here we have a heading and a subheading. And we can see this one is bigger font than this one. Looks good. And of course, all of our images are going to look a little bit wild over here. All right, it looks like these are some headings that are happening further down the page. There's another heading here. And then we have a heading for each of these sections that go across. These icon fonts, they're just wild. I did not expect that those were going to show up that way. All right. So I think because those are showing up so crazy, I don't think it's going to actually work to do this one. So what we could do instead is go to the information tab and go to um wait, where is it? Am I missing it? View document outline. There it is. It's over in the third column. Okay. So here we go. So this will actually let us really quickly and easily check when things are looking unexpected without CSS. This is a really quick and easy way that we can go ahead and check. We do have 54 headings on our homepage, which is quite a lot. And here we go. So our H1 is the big heading at the top of the page, which is what we would expect. Then we have an H2 that says, and replace spreadsheets for good. So that's a little bit odd because it is, it starts with an ampersand or the word and basically, and it's obviously continuing a thought that was started in the H1. So I think you could definitely make an argument that maybe that shouldn't be a separate H2. And maybe it should be instead just part of the H1. And I know that what the challenge that we have is that it is styled differently, right? So it is called out as a separate style. You can still do that without making it an H2, right? We could wrap that that subheader, we could wrap it in a span and apply a separate style to it. So that's definitely an option that we've got there. All right, so let's kind of take a look. We have some headings for different things that the platform can do. Do you feel bogged down with tedious accessibility processes? And then we have another section with 5 subsections underneath it describing different aspects of the platform. And again, we have this kind of odd situation where we've got like a subheader. It's not really heading up its own section of content. It's really part of this H2. And it is a little bit tricky because, of course, we are using, we use Elementor to build the Aardvark marketing website so that our marketing team has full control over the site without having to go through our developers all the time, right? Because our developers are otherwise busy building out our products. And we don't necessarily want to be distracting them with work on the marketing website for making simple updates and changes. So I would say that's definitely something that we might want to take a look at and maybe make the parentheses not a heading, so that this would just be the heading and then these would be subsections underneath it. We have that again, H2, H3, H3, H2, H2. And then here we have kind of an unusual situation. And this is in that section that has the numbers. So let me scroll down to it. All right. So we've got this section where we are numbering them 1, 2, 3. And how that has gotten set up in the WYSIWYG tool is that the number itself, the number 1, 2, and 3 are marked as H2s, and then the actual heading for that section of content is an H3, which I think if you weren't trying to achieve a certain kind of design aesthetic, is not necessarily something that you would do. It was this kind of HTML structure was definitely put in place to achieve a certain look. And I would say it's probably not the best semantic use of those elements. I would say probably the 1, 2, and 3 could almost be considered decorative and could maybe just be background text. Another option, of course, would be to mark up that whole section as an ordered list. If we thought that the 1, 2, and 3 were important enough to become part of a list. And it looks like we are saying, get started in 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. So that might make sense to have those numbers just be something decorative that's maybe ignored. marked as to be ignored by assistive technology and have them more there as almost images floating in the background. And then each one of these items could be a list item um, that would automatically be numbered just because they're an ordered list. And then have these, a heading and a paragraph basically inside of each one. So that's a possibility that we could consider there to improve that a little bit. And then if we go back down through the page, interestingly, we have an H2 that's repeated, which I'd be interested to know kind of what's going on there. Only one is visible. So it's possible that we've got two of those on the page for mobile layout reasons, right? Like maybe one of them gets hidden on smaller screens and shown. So as long as those are hidden and shown in the correct way, that should be fine. And I can double check on that and get it fixed if it needs to be. All right, then we have H2 followed by a bunch of H3s. And here we have this parentheses again, which is a little bit of an odd situation that maybe we could handle in a slightly different way. H2, H3. Try to send your homepage all in one. And then this looks like we're getting into the footer here, the footer of the website. And just sharing out some different links that are down in the footer. Yeah, so each of those are headings for these different sections of content in the footer. All right. So we have a few things there that we could definitely take a look at and improve, but I think overall the headings are in decent shape. One of the things that we're looking for with the headings is we want to make sure that there is an H1, a single H1 that's at the top of the page. And then we want to make sure that the other headings are used in order, which I didn't see any issues with that on this page, right? So you should have an H1 at or near the top of the page that explains the purpose of that particular page, the main idea of what that page is all about. And that should be the H1. Then as you go down a page and there are sections of content on the page, each of those would be started with an H2, which will denote a section of content. And then if there are subsections of content within that, those would be H3. So if we take a look over at the page, I'm just going to quickly scroll back up to the top and find a good example. So here's a good example where we have this section of content, and this is our H2, the only uplifting all-in-one accessibility platform is our H2. And then we have these subsections of content within that section, which would be H3s. And you can keep going. Like if you want to take a subsection and divide it even further into subsections, you can definitely do that. It goes all the way down to H6 in HTML. So you have H1 to H6. It's pretty rare to see anybody use H5 and H6, but they are valid. They are semantic. And if you need them for your particular layout or the way that your content is structured, by all means, you can go ahead and use, H4s, H5s, H6s. You would just want to make sure that you are using them correctly. You wouldn't want to jump straight from using an H2 to using an H5, for example. You would want to make sure that they get used in order. And if they need to look a certain way, because you're trying to achieve a certain design, you can modify what those different levels of headings look like with CSS, or if you're using a drag and drop editor like Elementor, you can definitely modify what those look like. So if there's a case where you need to use an H2 because semantically that's the correct heading, but you want it to be smaller, you can modify the style of it, but still leave it as an H2 and still have that semantic benefit. All right, so our next easy check is to check color contrast, and I would be pretty surprised if we had any color contrast issues here, but let's go ahead and take a look. Here we have a white background with all of the text that's on top of it is all pretty dark. So there's nothing that looks like it's even close to not meeting those color contrast requirements. Here again, the background's not quite as light as it is up here, but still this text is plenty dark, and these icons also, because we know icons have contrast requirements, those also have plenty of contrast. Let's go ahead to the next section. So here, this looks like a white background with black text, which is as much contrast as you can get. It might not be fully white background or fully dark text. It can be a little bit hard to tell sometimes. Here we've got a pretty light background and pretty dark text, so I don't see any potential issues here. And then here we have multiple colors in our background. So what you want to do when you have a case like this is you would want to take, we have dark text. So our concern would be with the darkest color that's in the background, which I think is this shade of blue. We can just scroll down a little bit to make sure. It actually looks like this shade of blue might be the darkest. It's a little bit darker than what we see at the top. And we would just want to make sure that the shade that is closest to our text has plenty of contrast. And I think in this case, for sure, it does. This dark text has plenty of contrast with even this slightly darker blue background color. We've got white on a nice dark blue. And here we have not actually black, it looks like, but very, very dark navy blue icons and text on top of a very light background. Same here. And then here we have white text on this very dark navy blue background. Here we've got dark text on a very light background. We do have these numbers kind of floating in the back, but they're very light in color. Now, here's where something might get a little bit interesting is, do the numbers themselves have enough contrast with the background? So we could definitely check that. So let's get our color picker and let's pick this blue color of the text, and you can see that gives us a hex code right there. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it over here as our foreground color. And then I'm just going to double check. I don't think that's actually a white background. So I'm just going to sample that background. Yeah, so it's FB, FC, FB maybe? Let's go look. Oh, FE, okay. And here we have, so the contrast ratio between the color of those numbers and the color of the background is only 1.1.2. And we would, it is very large, so we would only have to pass this large text contrast ratio, which is about 3:1. And one thing that you can do really quickly over here is I like to do it with my keyboard. If I put focus on that lightness, I can actually see what happens when I make this color darker, and I can see just how much darker I might need to make it to meet that AA large text contrast. So there we go. So that is how much darker those numbers would need to be to meet that background context. So that is a big difference. I had to press that arrow down key many, many times and make that several shades darker. So I think that's something that we might want to look at. Now, here's where we might run into trouble, is because this color is so dark now to contrast with this background, is does this text on top still have enough contrast? And also, does that overall have, are we completely ruining the visual appearance of this section by having those numbers look that dark, right? Because you can see here they are. Here is this very pale, pale blue, and this is the shade that we would need to get them to meet color contrast. So we might actually have to reconsider this section a little bit and make sure that we might want to touch up the design of this and make it look a little bit different. Maybe so that the numbers aren't background numbers. Maybe we make them a little smaller and put them up above each of these sections instead, so that we don't have this kind of layered, this kind of layered effect where the numbers are in the background of those sections. So that is something that we might want to pay a little bit of attention to. And I'm just going to sample this text. And let's go take a look. I'm going to leave this as the foreground for now because it doesn't really matter which is which. Okay, so if those numbers were actually this dark, our text would still have plenty of contrast on top of them. I do think it would be somewhat distracting and difficult to try to read, even if it does technically match the contrast requirements. I think it would make it kind of distracting and difficult to read this text if these numbers were quite that dark. So that's something that we might have to explore with our marketing team, right? And try to figure out, like, is there a different way that we could rework this section? Because what's there right now, it's difficult to make it accessible without kind of ruining the design aesthetic of what it looks like, which is something that you have to do sometimes. Sometimes you just have to kind of shift your thinking a little bit and come at a design problem in a different way in order to meet accessibility guidelines. All right, let's keep going down the page. We've got plenty of contrast here. Everything here looks good. I'm going to just start using my page down button so that we don't have so much movement happening on the screen. So everything here looks good. We could double check if white has enough contrast with this background color. I think it probably does just from looking at it, but let's just double check. So let's grab this color and I'm going to copy that and we'll paste it over here. It's actually our background. And then let me close this heading tab so it's not in my way anymore. And then let's grab this text color here, which looks like it's white. Yep, it's just white. So 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Just passes for large text. And I would say that's definitely at least 24 pixels tall. Let me see if I can actually verify that in, let's see, can I actually tell text size here? I don't think I can. We can actually validate the HTML right here. So if you were interested in still trying to meet 4.1.1, you definitely could. Yeah, so I think to try to check this, font size, I would have to actually look at some code. We can do it real quick. Open up the browser console. I'm pretty sure that's at least 24 pixels. Highlight that, and we should be able to go to computed and get the font size. Did I go past it? Yeah, it's 35 pixels. So yes, way past 24. So it only has to meet this large text, and it does. So we're good there. All right, let's keep looking. We could probably double check this hover color, especially it looks like on this blue background. So let's take a look at that. We can sample, whoops, wrong tool. Sample this background color. So there's our background color, and I'll paste that over here as background. And now I have the challenge of trying to get that hover color. I can show you a trick in the inspector. So if we select that link, we can say, whoops, sorry, I don't know how to do this in Firefox. Oh, that's not it. Oh, it should be over here. Here we are, hover. Hover. There we go. Now we can see our hover style. Okay, so we did have to open up the browser console and look at a little bit of code today. But I do want to, I think this is going to be the easiest place to grab that blue. All right, and let's go check it. Whoops. I don't want the color picker. I want foreground. Okay, ooh, there we go. Does not pass, does not pass. Doesn't even pass if it was large text, and it is not large text. So that is one that we have to take a look at. Let me check the non-hover color on that. Just see if that matches, or if that passes rather. Sorry. Okay, so that passes no problem. It's just that hover color that we're going to have to take a look at and get that fixed. So again, that's something I'm going to do in the WordPress settings. So I'll do that in just a couple of minutes after the stream is over, and then you can go to our website and check that out. So this learn more on homepage. The hover style only needs to have a little bit of touch up. Okay, so let's keep going. So I said I'd be surprised if we found any contrast issues. We found them anyway. So let's just double check. I think these are all pretty high contrast areas. All right, everything here looks good. We either have white on a very dark color, or we have a pretty dark color on a pretty light background. Same here, and then our footer all looks good. Okay, so we did actually find a couple of places that color contrast has to be touched up on our homepage. And I'll just go home. There we go. So we don't have so much movement on the screen. Next easy check is to resize text. All right, to resize text in your browser, if you're on Windows, you use Control and the plus sign. You can use, well, to do all of the controls, it's Control plus sign to make text larger, Control minus sign to make it smaller, and Control 0 to set it back to its default size. If you're on a Mac, you use the Command key instead of the Control key. So Command plus sign to make it bigger, Command minus sign to make it smaller, and Command 0 to set it back to its default size. So I'm going to go ahead and click Command plus, and you can see right here, it will tell me exactly how large it is. We need to go to 200%. Whoops, went past it. There we are, 200%. And now we're just going to take a look at the page, make sure everything still looks correct, that we haven't cut off any content, that we haven't created any bizarre layout issues, and that all of the functionality is still available. All right, so I do notice right away that our kind of floating help button here is getting a little bit cut off. And so that is a third-party script that is embedded on our page. And I don't know exactly how much control I have over that. So that's something I'm going to have to look into. I'll put it on my list of potential issues that we need to look at. Help button at 200%. Okay, so that's definitely something that we want to look at. Our header still works. It doesn't quite look as nice as it did when we weren't super zoomed in, but we can still get to all of the links. If I try to open that, the drop-down menu is open. Ooh, there's a problem. We do have the sign up button showing up on top of those drop-downs. So that's probably something that we'll want to take a look at and get that fixed. All right, so sign up in header at 200%. Something else that I'll go ahead and take a look at. All right, and we'll go back down through. All of this looks okay. Of course, this little help button is sitting here partially cut off and not going away because it is fixed. All right, so this all looks good. Actually, let me go back to using my page down button. Okay, all looks good. Nothing cut off. Everything still works. Same for this section. Same. I'm just going to double check contrast on this hover color. I just noticed it as it page down and hovered over that because this is not a white background and that's a pretty light shade of blue. So let's try that again. So if I go back over here and I pick this to highlight this link, and then I click hover here and say hover, now I have the hover color that I can work with. And let me just grab that color and put that over here. Oh, I forgot to copy it. Okay, copy. Of course, because I'm zoomed in, I can't quite see the whole number. So that would be my foreground value. And let's get our background value. Oops. Do that there. Copy and paste in the background. And what do we have? Oof. Does not pass. Does not pass because that is not large text. It is normal text. So that needs to have a little bit more contrast on that hover color. All right, so put myself a note that that's in more than one place. All right, and we will get that fixed. Okay, let's keep going. Let me hide this away and we'll keep going down the page to make sure nothing's cut off. Oh, let me get rid of my color picker there. All right. Everything looks okay here. Here we have an issue. We have part of our text is covered up by our image. So that's something that we'll have to rethink, which this is a section that we were thinking would maybe have to be redone and have a new approach taken to it anyway. So as part of that rework, as we kind of redesign and redo this section, I think that's something that we'll take into account, is that we also have potentially an issue with the image going over text once the text is enlarged. Okay, let's keep going down the page. Actually, let me make myself a note. All right, image with screenshots. Needs captions, I think. It also has an issue at 200%. Okay, let's keep going. Everything here looks good. All of this looks good. That all looks good. Okay. Good. This section, which we do have to touch up anyway, still looks fine, even at this enlarged size. Nothing cut off or overlapping. Here we have a case of overlapping text. So this is something that we would definitely want to take care of. So I think what's probably happening here is that these long words, accessibility is a long word, professionals is a long word, and they're actually wider than the CSS container itself. And as a result, they aren't wrapping, they aren't breaking. They could break with a hyphen and wrap to the next line. That would be one option that would keep them from overlapping on that text. Or the text could be maybe a little bit smaller. So one of those solutions would need to be applied. So writing myself a note, most accessibility professionals section has an issue at 200%. Okay, let's keep going down the page. The rest of this section looks good. The rest of this section looks okay. I just noticed there's a link in here. That does turn that lighter color, and that is definitely not going to be enough contrast on this darker blue color. So that's another one. It looks like maybe we just need to change our hover color on our links throughout the site because that color that we're using right now, not enough contrast on most of the backgrounds that we have in use on the site. All right, we'll keep going down. All of this looks good. Customer support section doesn't look as pretty as it looks when we're not zoomed in, but it works just fine. No text is overlapping. We can see everything. Everything is good here. Looks like probably another link. Well, I think that's one that we already looked at and needs to have the contrast for the hover color touched up. All right. Even our little, look at this. Our pricing section needs to be updated at 200%. So let me make a note for myself. Pricing at 200%. Something that we want to take a look at. And then, of course, the sign up button, just sticking right out of the column there. We definitely would want to take care of that because on certain screen sizes, of course, that button is probably going to cover up this text that's over here on the right-hand side. So we'd want to keep that from happening. And we have some overlapping text in our footer. So let me make a note for footer at 200% is another thing that we probably need to touch up. And maybe break that out into multiple columns, or allow words to break on a hyphen, something like that. We'll find a good solution for that. Okay, next easy check. And I think this one will be our last one before we wrap up for the day. Keyboard access and visual focus. So I'm going to just hit Command 0 to put this back to its default size. And we will start up at the top of the page. Let me actually refresh the page so focus is right at the very top. And we'll just start tabbing through the page, make sure we can get to everything. So you can see here we have a button to skip to contact support, which will take focus directly. Oops, if I actually click it, hold on. All right, skip to contact support. When we click that link, you can see now there's a focus ring here. We are focused on this help little floating icon down here. So we can skip directly to that. Let me put focus back up at the top of the page again. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, what am I doing? I'm not going to log into Aardvark. All right, there we go. So we have our skip to contact support, and then we have our skip to main content link. We want to make sure that that works, and that seems to have taken us right down here to our main content, so that's all good. Let's go back. Skip to content. Okay, that's where we left off. I tab. I can see that I'm on the logo. I can tab through the menu, and if I'm interested in getting to those drop-down menus, I can just hit the Enter key, and now I can access our drop-down menus. And in a previous live stream, we saw that there was a color contrast issue when we tab through the menu. You can see that that's been fixed. I can hit the Escape key to close that menu. So everything is looking good for the navigation. Okay, get a focus ring around the sign up button, focus ring around try Aardvark for free, another focus ring around try Aardvark for free. And now I can see my focus is on this link to learn more about visual mode, learn more about audit management, remediation management, scanning and monitoring, try Aardvark for free, try Aardvark for free, give Aardvark a try for free link. And then we have a link to our help center and video tutorials, a link to contact our support team. I can tell exactly where focus is. And here is my cat Oliver to say hello to everyone. All right, contact us link. We can see exactly where focus is, learn more about Aardvark and our accessibility goals, hire an expert. And now we have this accordion, so this ought to be interesting to try to operate the accordion with just the keyboard. And actually that seemed to have worked just fine. So what I'd be curious to know, I noticed that I have focus right now. You can see the focus ring is around that first item in the accordion, and hitting the space bar on the keyboard does open and close that accordion, which is what I would expect. But when I hit tab again, so it has content open, it goes into the content that's on that particular tab panel. And then when I hit tab again, I go to the next section. So one thing I'd be curious to know is if my arrow keys instead will move focus to the other tab panels. So let's try it. Down arrow key. Great. So I can use my arrow keys to select a different tab panel. So if I wanted to answer this question, is Aardvark an accessibility overlay? I can hit the space bar. It opens that tab panel. I can tab and get to the link that's inside that panel. So this generally looks to be in pretty good shape. We would, of course, have to test it with screen readers to make sure, but right now we're just doing a keyboard test. So let's go ahead and tab down the page. Now we can tab to this toggle. Can I work the toggle with just the keyboard? Yes, I can. All right. Then we have a contact us link. We have a try us on our homepage. Didn't quite scroll up into view. There we go. But we can see where focus is. And then we'll just make sure that we can see where focus is everywhere in the footer. It's all looking pretty good. And then our social media icons. All right, and then our legal pages, and then finally we're back to that support button that's floating there. All right, so keyboard access is actually looking pretty good on this page. And I think that's where we'll wrap up the live stream today. We'll pick up next time. I think next time I'm actually going to go over using a screen reader and show you how to do some testing with a screen reader. So we could test this same page, or if you want to submit another page to us to potentially be tested with a screen reader, I'm happy to do that. You can leave a comment on this video with a page that you'd like to see tested. And so 2 weeks from today, we'll do the next live stream, and I will walk you through using, we'll do VoiceOver since I'm on my Mac, VoiceOver with Safari. And we'll go through and test a page and see how it works with that. Of course, if you want to always do screen reader testing with multiple screen readers. But I think just to keep things simple for the live stream, we'll just do VoiceOver. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for being patient with me, for being late. Give Aardvark a try. You can test it for free on your homepage. No credit card is required to go ahead and sign up and give that a try. And hope this content was helpful for you, and hope you've enjoyed Oliver's presence sitting here behind the microphone. And I will see you all next time. Thank you so much.